Hey everybody, I'm Spencer Hughes, usually published as S.R. Hughes. I'm a novelist and a freelance writer. My upcoming novel, The War Beneath, is available for pre-order now. It comes out October 1st. Please pre-order so that I can pay rent on this, my spacious abode. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about something near and dear to my heart. It's one of the many uniting facets of fantasy genre work, whether you're talking about medieval fantasy, Renaissance fantasy, steampunk, urban, contemporary fantasy, etc., 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 etc. It's the convention that, for the purposes of the setting, some magic or element of the supernatural actually, literally exists. However, every implication that that would have on a world is, upon any kind of reflection, utterly horrifying. In this, my very first series of YouTube videos, I'll be discussing how the presence of literal magic in any setting makes that setting absolutely the type of place where horror stories would happen all the time, everywhere, constantly. Magic is horrifying from the moment of its introduction in any setting. And it's horrifying because its sheer presence implies that certain facets of observable material reality simply don't function in understandable ways. Or, in the absolute best case of still scary scenarios, at least they do not function in ways that we can at all understand. And how do you navigate a reality where the laws of physics dictate that matter cannot be created or destroyed except in circumstances where you utter the secret words in this exact order while waving a wand at the moon on a cloudless night? In which case, living in a world where the laws of physics are that shiftable would be chaos. Now, some modern urban and contemporary fantasies have lampshaded this notion with the hand wave that usually, most of the time, reality functions as normal, with magic then acting as a series of hacks or cheat codes. But that explanation isn't actually any better. Now, instead of having a buggy and frankly shredded tapestry of physical laws, you instead have a normal set of physical laws, and then a secondary subset of laws, accessible only to certain people, and only when they feel like it, I guess? And what does it say about the nature of such a reality that its fabric is indeed so malleable? That anyone could bend or break the fundamental physical laws of the universe implies something not only about those laws, but about that universe. Living in any place where reality is so frangible or prone to alteration would be an exercise in constant background paranoia. If the laws of reality are hackable, who knows when someone might hack them to kill you? If magic is literally real and your father dies of cancer, how can you be sure it was his exposure to asbestos that caused it, or all of those packs of smokes? How can you know for sure that it wasn't some kind of hex, or curse, or a spell? As certain as you could be, medically, in a world with literal magic, you could never be 100% certain. And that would break a lot of people. This might be the reason so many fantasy novels are told from the perspectives of people who either are mages, wizards, or supernatural, or people comfortable with the idea of such things existing, or at least accepting of the idea. After all, most stories featuring strong supernatural elements and then told from uncomfortable or non-supernatural perspectives turn into horror stories. Magic is cool to use, but not so much to see used. A vampire book might be cool if the narrator is a vampire, or at least fucking one. But it's not so cool when the narrator is the struggling mother of a missing child in a world where vampires exist. And even stories where the supernatural and the paranormal exist only within the fringes and margins of society, such as in the X-Files, where such occurrences might only pop up once in every couple 100,000 cases, normal people still only get to lead their normal lives until the paranormal shows up. By the time these normal people leading their normal lives get to chapter 4 of a book, or maybe minute 15 of a movie, the paranormal is already barreling toward them. A Mack truck monstrosity revving toward a wreck of slag, the most life-shattering fact of all. That the whole reality these normal people thought they were living in is fundamentally brittle, breakable, changeable. And even if these normal people survive their first confrontation with that fact won't die when the bad guys do. You might notice that my shirt looks different than it did 5 seconds ago. That's because I'm filming this on 2 different days and then clipping them together into one seamless video. It's editing magic, in other words. But what if we'd been having this conversation across the table from each other, and you blinked, and everything changed? Not just my shirt, or the quality and texture of my hair, but the folds on the sheet on the bed, the shadows cast by the folds, the lighting in my room, the diffuse glow coming in through the window. What if you blinked, and every little detail changed just a little bit? What if you asked me, did everything just change? Would it be better if I said yes or no? If I said yes, what would your follow-up questions be? Would you need proof? And what if I could provide that proof? What if this was something that I could do at will? And then what if you asked me about the extent of my power? And I told you I honestly didn't know. How scared would you be if you believed me? Or if I said no? If I said, no, nothing changed at all, what are you talking about? How many hours would it take for you to believe me then? How long would you have to spend telling yourself that none of this really changed, that none of this really happened? That this was all just a trick, that your brain played on you? How long would it be until you believed that? Would you ever entirely believe it? Would you ever feel certain? Or would there always be that nagging sense, that unclear notion that things aren't really as they seem? Anyway, where were we? For those who do survive their clash with the supernatural, the world would become a fundamentally altered place. If anything can happen, then yeah, anything can happen. Or worse, it could happen again. In any fantasy setting, especially urban or contemporary fantasy, the conspiracy theory people are usually right. And that's not good for anybody. But I have another script about that particular situation, the effects of literal magic on secrecy versus truth, individuals versus organizations, la 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 la. So today let's stay focused on the fact that magic also straight up ruins the very fundament of reality. Except for fiction, where the systems of reality are built to support it, in which case it only makes day-to-day life virtually unlivable. So far I've mostly argued about the ways that magic breaks any reality similar to our own, or similar enough to have approximately the same understanding of physics and cosmic universal law that we have. But worlds where magic doesn't break the rules aren't less scary to live in. Even in fiction where the laws of physics somehow include the practice of magic remains a monkey wrench in people's daily lives. even with ideas of equal exchange, Hammurabian life-for-a-life magic, blood magic, sacrifice magic, Jungian archetypal mysticism, the use of certain rare or esoteric materials, or the use of psychic energies that can somehow be logically harnessed within the world of the story. Pretty much any applied system of mathematic or repeatable magic is already frequently shown as terrifying in the fiction where it exists, and for a good reason. Once reality itself encompasses these kinds of energy exchanges and pathways, a lot of other questions start piling up. I mean, to what extent does this magic or alchemy function? How powerful is it? Could it be used to feed the hungry? If it could be used for that, then why isn't it being used for that? And how do the hungry feel about the situation? If it is being used to feed the hungry, how does that change the shape of society? What sort of new laws might exist? What perspectives might people have? As for the laws of physics, what does it say if an appropriate offering can be mystically altered into a corresponding event, a thing guaranteed to happen, or a physical object, new material, a fireball maybe? What happens then to any kind of certainty? Because what you give up in a world where magic follows the laws of physics is very similar to what you give up when it doesn't. Certainty. And how do you walk down the street with your earbuds in, listening to your Spotify playlist, if you live in a world where somebody could use magic to turn a watermelon and a handful of stolen electronics into an improvised explosive device? And maybe the physical ingredients are more complicated than that, or the ritual longer, more complex, but the fundamental idea remains the same. If the proper footwork is applied, if you follow the right steps, you can transform one thing into a totally different thing. And there are terrifying implications to that. But really, they're similar to the implications of a world where magic does break the law. As I just said, the thing you're really giving up is certainty. You now live in a world where you can't be sure of anything at all, ever, and that's insane. I mean, the real life, IRL, real world that we all live in already carries so many stresses and so many things we take for granted that can be ripped apart in a split second. In a world with literal magic, even magic that is somehow part of the normal tapestry of material and physical law, you never know when it might rear its hideous visage into your unexpected life. It would be the real world made worse by the sheer malleability of its reality. The real world minus any kind of certainty or realistic ability to carry expectations. A world where no consequence could be fully foreseen or thought through. A world where anything beautiful or tragic could happen at any time with almost no warning, and sometimes, sure, it'll be awe-inspiring, it'll be beautiful, but just as often, it'll be terrible. Think about any shocking massacre of the past, far or recent, and reimagine it as something someone made out of a watermelon and a cell phone because magic allowed them to do that. Now imagine that magic makes sense within the laws of physics you're taught at school, and that anyone around you might be capable of using it. This is not a metaphor about guns. I know it kind of is, but it's also not. I promise. But it's that. What if this is a tool anyone could use to do anything, and some of those things were terrible, and you never know who would use it, when, or for what? It would be constant paranoia. Constant paranoia spiked with moments of extreme awe and terrible shock. And it would not be fun. Whew! Okay, I think that's all the time we have for that particular topic. That is, how literal magic scratches apart the reality of every setting it exists within, and how even in settings where it doesn't do that, it would still be horrifying to live there. But stay tuned, because very soon I'll be covering another bone-chilling, soul-crushing series of questions relating to literal magic and supernatural abilities in fantasy settings. That is, who gets access to such power, and how? And it turns out, when you're asking questions about the who's and the how's of fantasy genre supernatural powers and magical ability, It's horror all the way down. And don't worry, sooner or later I will get around to telling you how I answer some of these questions in my upcoming supernatural crime thriller, The War Beneath, and its extended setting of Ocean Rest. My answers are just as terrifying as all of them would have to be. Because I am, like everybody else on this platform, completely desperate for your attention, like, comment, share, whatever, subscribe. There's some buttons at the bottom of the screen. You should press them, please, to help me. And if you comment and I don't think you're a total shitbag, I'll respond. Shouldn't have said the shitbag thing. Don't hold me to that.